The look on this wrestler's face says it all. He's extremely angry because something crucial in the match went wrong, and he knows that backstage he'll probably get chewed out by the bosses and producers. He's literally hating the match he just had, but what he doesn't know is that he's not the only one who's hated his match in WWE. Future WWE superstars, how's everyone doing? I'm Diego Aranis, and this is another new video on my channel. In today's video, my friends, we're going to talk about reasons why WWE wrestlers ended up hating their matches, but not just for any reason. For example, a wrestler and another were having a dream match, truly the match of their lives, but a single real mistake by the referee ruined the entire match. Just like, for example, another wrestler hated the matches he had with a particular ring partner. If you want to know more details, you'll find out as soon as the video starts. But before that, I sincerely ask you to please subscribe to this channel. I realized I had to record this intro because a lot of people watch the content, but very few are subscribing. So without anything else to say, thank you very much. Let the video begin. Also, go to my Instagram, and of course to the Instagram of WWE Experiencia in case you want to travel to the next WWE events in the United States. You can travel from any country. So without anything else to say, let's start the video. In his fourth book, Chris Jericho describes this story. He calls his 3-minute match against Raven abysmal. It happened on February 26, 2001, and right from the start, Jericho says they missed 2 rope swings at the beginning. At the end, Tori interfered, dressed as a black ninja to help Raven, but she couldn't see well, and Raven had to loudly yell at her to hit him with a piece of wood. Also, Jericho's finishing move, the Lion Salt, landed directly on Raven's knees. Since the show had been recorded, the next day, WWE put a television in the dining room so the other employees could watch Raw. Jericho remembers seeing Stone Cold laughing in disbelief and throwing his cap against the wall in protest at how terrible the match had been, and Jericho slipped out the back door in embarrassment. Kurt Angle hated the rivalry where he was harassing Sharmell, Booker T's wife, but he hoped the final match would make up for everything. When Angle and Booker T faced each other at the 2005 Judgment Day event, the match was going great, on its way to being a 5-star match. However, a communication error caused referee Charles Robinson to make a legitimate 3 count after a fast count, abruptly ending the match. They had about 12 minutes of planned match time left. Both were shocked in the ring, and Booker T says that to this day, he always reminds the referee about it whenever they meet. Whenever Kurt Angle faced Benoit, the chemistry was magical. The match at Unforgiven in 2002 received unanimous praise from the fans, and backstage it was considered a candidate for Match of the Year. However, Chris Benoit didn't like it. Since he was an absolute perfectionist, he felt that the moves weren't smooth enough and that the match was rough. Angle explains on his podcast that it's precisely that rough nature that makes a match look good, since it makes it resemble a real fight. But Angle says that Benoit never agreed, and in fact, he always hated that match. At WrestleMania 32, Dean Ambrose wanted a brutal, spectacular, and destructive street fight against Brock Lesnar. He suggested using thumbtacks and a bat wrapped in barbed wire, but all his ideas were rejected because the officials were afraid to propose this to Lesnar or that the Beast might get injured. In fact, Lesnar canceled the rehearsal the night before, arguing that they didn't need any extra props. That the story was quite simple and should be limited only to his Black City, and that Ambrose should just use one weapon and that's it. That night, Ambrose got in the ring furious, feeling that Lesnar had a really lazy attitude and creatively he didn't want to do anything. The Lyra Valkyria versus Becky Lynch at Summerlin 2025 was the end of a 4-month rivalry, but the pressure worked against her. They decided to innovate by using plastic ties. In the middle of the match, for Lyra, by accident, the ties slipped out of her hands too early. Because of nerves and thinking the cameras hadn't noticed, she put her hands back into the loose ties. Later on, when it was time to really break free, the ties got stuck and wouldn't come off. Lyra had to crawl under the ring so someone from production could cut them. The match went completely off script and lasted 10 minutes longer than planned. Both ended up frustrated and devastated after botched spots. Throughout his career, Undertaker had to wrestle with opponents of questionable technical skill in a professional manner. However, in a casket match against Hayden Reich at the 2005 Royal Rumble, he lost his patience. The match was full of mistakes, including a poorly executed DDT, and he delivered one of the weakest chokeslams in history because Hayden Reich didn't even jump or make an effort to push himself up. On television, you could see The Undertaker shaking his head in obvious annoyance. When he crossed the curtain to the locker room, he gave Hayden Reich a deadly glare in what has been described as an extremely tense and unpleasant moment. The Money in the Bank 2025 match was not perfect, not at all. The planned ending of the match required The Fiend and Seth Rollins to be face to face at the top of the ladder, urgently battling for the briefcase to create maximum drama with the audience. However, Hayden Reich forgot or didn't follow the instructions to speed up the pace at the final moment, and this caused all the suspense of the climax to be lost. Seth Rollins stated that he felt a visceral rage because the ending could have been much better, and Triple H gave him a stern talking to. Backstage, Edge Hayden Reich gave a sermon, reproaching him for missing the perfect opportunity to shine, and beyond that, he ended up ruining his partner Seth Rollins' match because the crowd barely reacted. CM Punk hated all the matches he had with Elijah Bork and John Morrison in 2007. Back in those years, Punk considered Elijah Bork his least favorite opponent of all time, calling him a diva and the worst he's ever worked with. On the other hand, even though he liked John Morrison, he hated the series of matches they had at 3 consecutive events because management was only focused on pushing Morrison. They were only given 8 minutes per match, and since they were both young, they made the mistake of trying to fit 15 minutes worth of moves into just 5 minutes. CM Punk describes those matches at events as garbage because of the time restrictions they had. He only singles out one match they had on TV with Morrison, where they were actually given freedom. And we go to June 17, 2011 on SmackDown, a tag team match where Sin Cara had made several mistakes, but the disaster happened when Ted DiBiase Jr. took the 3 count. The referee made the count even though DiBiase got his shoulder up in time, and the referee argued that DiBiase wasn't positioned well enough in relation to the main camera. Cody Rhodes considers this the worst match of his career. However, the legendary moment happened in the gorilla position area. Vince McMahon was furious, standing up and taking off his headset, but before he could yell, Ted DiBiase Jr. ran past him and shouted in total frustration, "Where is that referee? He's trying to screw me." Vince, completely stunned, just put his headset back on in silence, and according to Cody Rhodes, he never talked about yelling again. More than people have lost, and he was making his big comeback after a year away. Management decided that Becky should win the title almost instantly to create a huge impact and turn her into a heel. Bianca Belair described this as the lowest point of her career, feeling deeply embarrassed because her parents were in the audience. In her own book, Becky details that when she returned to the locker room, she found Bianca crying, feeling that all her momentum had been killed. Becky tried to assure her that she would help her regain her status throughout the rivalry, which she eventually did.